Hi, this is Jessie Silverman here, one of the speech language pathologists at Big Blue Canopy, and I wanted to share with you all that May is Better Speech and Hearing Month. So I'd like to highlight some of the areas that a speech language pathologist can help your child and your family. So first, I just wanted to say I love my job. My job can be a very rewarding job. There have been times where I've been seeing kiddos or like toddlers where the parents are almost in tears. The next week they come in saying, "Oh my goodness, she called me mama for the first time," or "he said daddy," or "he told me I love you back" after months of telling him I love you and not getting anything in reciprocation. So it can be really exciting to see those moments and seeing how big of an impact our job can have on families. Also, too, being able to provide means of communication for those children who may not be verbal or oral communicators. So whether that be using a communication board or a speech generating device or sign language or pictures, it's very fulfilling to be able to provide communication for those kids who have not been able to communicate with words. One example, recently I'm working with a kiddo and we're working on using his device to search for verbs. And one of the pictures I've been showing him is a boy kicking a soccer ball. And he goes straight to the K and finds it and hits the button and starts laughing. And I tried to ask him, do you play soccer? And I asked his mom and she said, no, he doesn't play soccer, but he really, really likes to kick the ball in gym class. So we were also working on putting sentences and phrases together. So we started working on expressing interest using I like, and then whatever the object is. But we worked on putting the sentence together, I like to kick the ball. And now that he's able to put that together, he gets, pun intended, gets a kick out of it and starts cracking up laughing. So it's really cool to see that he's able to communicate that, because initially, my understanding, oh, you're laughing at the soccer ball, you obviously play soccer. But no, he doesn't, but he does like to kick the ball in gym class. So it was really cool to be able to have that communication and exchange with him. So I'll briefly go over some of the areas that we as speech language pathologists can help. So one of the first areas I'll highlight is working on expressive language skills. So expressive language refers to the area of language where that's used to express wants, needs, pain, illness, thoughts, ideas. So like I said, if they're a verbal communicator, that's using words or phrases or sentences to communicate. And then if they are not verbal, using an alternative means of communication, so like a speech generating device or pictures to communicate, to put together single words and then moving into phrases and sentences. So we work on, if they are verbal communicators, working on increasing that verbal output. So if they are just using single words, like if we're seeing some of the little ones, we work on building into 2-word phrases and then moving into 3-word phrases, and then ultimately moving into sentences and connected speech. So it's a gradual process that we try to increase that verbal output if they are not using many words. And then as they're older, we'll work on those grammatical structures. And also retelling stories and events. So like, tell me what you did today using that first and then language, or tell me what happened in the story using that first and then language in the sequence. And then the next area I want to touch on is receptive language. So that is the area of understanding spoken language. So following directions, identifying named objects, identifying actions, identifying named actions, responding to open-ended questions like who, what, where, when, why. Those are all areas that we work on with receptive language skills. So if your child might not understand, some of those safety precautions like stop, don't go in the street, things like that, where it can be a big deal that they're not understanding you, we can work on improving those receptive language skills. Or if your child has trouble remembering multi-step directions, like if you say, go get your shoes and put your coat on, then go out to the bus, and your kid goes to the bus without their book bag, like, oh, they got lost in translation. They heard go to the bus, but they didn't hear those first steps prior to that. So we can work on improving those skills too, so they're more functional at home and in the classroom and across all settings. Articulation skills refer to the skills we use to produce different speech sounds using the articulators. So articulators being our lips, teeth, jaw, and palate to produce different sounds. So if there are speech errors or some of the speech sounds are compromised, we as a speech language pathologist will work on teaching proper placement for those productions so that the child is able to be understood by a variety of listeners. So that's an area that I see a lot of kiddos, working on some of the more common sounds like S. For S, our teeth are together and our tongue's behind our teeth. S, or L, our tongue goes up, la, behind our teeth. Or R, our tongue goes up and back, So those are common things that we'll work on in speech and a variety of other speech sounds as well. And then the next area I want to touch on is pragmatic language skills or social language that we use to establish and build social relationships with others. So for some kids, it doesn't come naturally that how to carry a conversation or how to take others' perspectives, understanding emotions, expressing themselves when they're experiencing those heightened emotions, like when they're having some anxiety or frustrated or upset. So those are all areas that we can work on improving those skills so that they are more successful with building friendships or social relationships with others. Another area that we work on, which I don't see many kids in this area, but we can work on it, is voice and resonance. So a common voice disorder in kids can be vocal abuse, which refers to abuse caused by bad habits that do damage to the vocal folds. So a common one in kids can be hoarseness because of yelling, where they're causing abuse and strain to the vocal folds. So we can work on using that just right voice. So not too loud, not too quiet, just right, where they're not putting that strain on there. So working on decreasing those bad habits that could be straining the vocal folds. Fluency and stuttering is another area that we as SLPs can improve if kids are having disfluent speech or experiencing those disfluencies. So we will teach, but depending on what they're doing, if they're repeating words or having some of those interjections with filler words or blocking, prolonging, there's a variety of things that could be going on with the stuttering. Based on what they are doing, we will teach them different fluency techniques to help compensate or decrease those disfluencies over time. And then another area that I kind of already touched on is augmentative alternative communication. So we refer to that as AAC. So that is any means of communication other than oral or verbal communication. So it could be facial expressions, sign language, using pictures, using a communication board, or using a speech generating device. So those are for the kids where they might not be able to express themselves verbally with words, but we'll give them something else to use to give that or provide that communication. And I wanted to highlight that AAC is not used to replace verbal speech or oral speech. It is often used to complement speech that's not quite there yet or not quite expanding yet, or bridge to that verbal communication that might be there one day. So a lot of times parents are hesitant, like, oh, I don't want to use a device or I don't want to use pictures because then they'll never talk. They'll just resort to that. But I've had kids in the past a lot of times where when they are using a device to communicate, by hearing that verbal output on the device, it helps improve their verbal output. So it can help complement that language or speech that's not there yet. And then another area that we can help improve with kids is feeding and swallowing. So, it might be confusing when people hear, oh, a speech pathologist works on feeding. But since we are we know the structures very well and the functions of the oral cavity and beyond, we do work on that as well. And there's a variety of skills that we can work on with kids, whether it be open cup drinking, straw drinking, clearing food from a spoon, using that upper lip activation. And improving jaw strength so that they are able to chew foods efficiently prior to swallowing, and pacing in between bites of food. If there is someone who stuffs too much food in their mouth and then they've got so much in there that they're gagging or choking or coughing, we can work on that as well. And also improving that jaw strength would help with that skill as well, where they're able to tolerate the foods and can chew them completely prior to swallowing. And also we can help, and OTs work on this a lot as well, increasing the variety of foods within their diet, whether, they have different texture aversions or they're a very picky eater, they're only limited to like 5 food items. We can work on improving and increasing the variety of foods that they are eating. So I hope this information was helpful, highlighting just the different areas that we as speech language pathologists can help you and your child. So if you would like to gain more information, you can email us at info@bigbluecanopy.com. And I look forward to possibly helping you. Thanks.